We will get started. We're expecting Linda Armin's en route, and we think Reverend Smith is en route as well. But we do have a quorum, but why don't we just go around the room and we'll get started with Gary. State your name for the record. We're on TV, remember? We're not TV, it's we're web streaming.
Gary O'Carr.
Frank Trotta.
Kevin Law.
Sam Stanley.
Jim Morgul.
Christopher Hahn.
Carol Gomes.
All right, we'll start next to...
Nicholas Sabata.
Oh, Nick, yeah, I just met you the other night. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Cocaine, please.
David Conover.
Peter Baker.
Matt Whalen.
Dexter Bailey.
Ken Kashansky.
Dennis Sasanis.
Ruben Pasternak.
Good timing,
for
Ruben.
being late.
Ruben. I have a name tag for you, so if you like that.
All right, Susan.
Hi, Susan Hollings.
Morning, Marcia Trachtenberg.
Morning, Matthew Moore.
Mark McElendis.
Ruben, again.
Pasternak.
Right.
Elaine Crossan.
Bruce Foley.
Barbara Turner.
All right, good, welcome all. And I'm going to recognize a quorum. Let's rise. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Christopher Hahn.
Oh, boy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Haven't done that since 4th grade. It was apparent.
You pulled through okay, though.
Okay. Well, first order of business is the approval of the minutes from December 8th, 2014. Motion by Frank, seconded by Jim. Any comments? You weren't here. Seconded by Chris. Any comments, revisions, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. I don't have a chairman's report today, and so I'm going to hand it right over to Sam for the president's report.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, and it's great to welcome everybody in the new year. Lots of things have been happening at Stony Brook, and primarily positive. Let me go through a few of them. One of the ones that I think that's been most important for the university and for our region has been the SUNY Board of Trustees supporting Stony Brook University Hospital and Southampton Hospital affiliation agreement. That's something that has been literally years in the making, but I think is a very important step forward. And I wonder if Ken, if you could just give everybody just an update on that.
Sure, Sam, thanks. As Sam suggested, it has been years. We look back over the records and we're pushing close to 3.5 years that this has been in the works. And through about 1.5 years of negotiation to arrive at a letter of intent between us and Southampton Hospital to form an affiliation, a hard affiliation, where the license for Southampton Hospital is actually transferred to Stony Brook University Hospital. We operate the two hospitals under one license to operate. And that allows very clear management lines of responsibility. It allows very a bringing together of the two institutions for maximum efficiency and effectiveness together. After the letter of intent was signed, we worked with SUNY Central to figure out what it is we needed to do to prove to SUNY Central that this was truly a win-win situation. We labored, we had due diligence, we had due diligence of the due diligence, and we had a number of hurdles posed to us by the Division of the Budget, by SUNY Central, by other agencies. And ultimately, in the last SUNY Board of Trustees meeting, a resolution was passed unanimously, both by the Academic and Hospital Committee and by the whole Board of Trustees, both unanimously passed, to move forward with this affiliation agreement. We view this to be the single biggest hurdle towards approval of the ultimate affiliation. There are still a few last things to do. We need to present this to the State Attorney General, to the Office of the State Controller for approval by them. We have to file a certificate of need with the Department of Health. Although we've spoken with the Department of Health at least 6 times, they have been in favor of this affiliation for quite some time. And We're very optimistic that we will be able, within the next 6 to 12 months, to have the final approval given. One last hurdle is that Southampton Hospital is part of the East End Health Alliance, an alliance of 3 hospitals, the other 2 being Peconic Bay Medical Center and East Long Island Hospital. The governance of EHA, as we call it, is such that any one hospital has veto power over the dealings of the other 2 hospitals. And so in order for this to occur, in order for Southampton to withdraw from EHA and affiliate with us, the other 2 hospitals have to give their blessing. And as a consequence, they too both want to affiliate, and because both of them want to affiliate either with us or another healthcare system, we need to get to some point where the other 2 hospitals feel comfortable that they are going to be having a partner, and then they will vote to allow Southampton Hospital to affiliate with us. It so happens that Reuben Pasternak has been leading efforts to negotiate with the Peconic Bay Medical Center and East Long Island Hospital. We know that both of them are dealing with another large 18 or so hospital healthcare system, to be unnamed, but pretty obvious who they are. And one way or another, we believe that both of those other 2 hospitals are going to affiliate. We hope it's with us, and SUNY Central knows this and the like. But that will be the last hurdle, is once that one is passed, I think all of the other approvals will be garnered, and we'll have a firm affiliation.
Is that a package deal, or could Eastern Long Island come with Stony Brook, Southampton, and Peconic go with the other
Yes,
hospital that shall not
that
be
is
named?
distinctly a possibility. Early on, East Long Island was saying we're going wherever Peconic is going, but they've since backed away from that. They really do want to go with Stony Brook.
So Reuben, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe how the services would come together, you know, and what might be changed in Southampton? And
Sure.
things
So,
like
actually, let me stand up. I can't see everybody.
Yeah.
In the course of these discussions, as Ken said, over 3.5 years, you get to know each other well. So the administrative side of the 2 organizations have gotten to know each other fairly well. But in terms of the structuring that we're doing in a formal sense, we have 14 groups that are going to be working on this, are starting to work on this already concurrently with leaders from the Southampton side. I call it the campus, even though I know it can't be the official term. Southampton campus, the Stony Brook campus, dealing with everything from operations to finance to clinical programs, medical staff credentialing, contracting, and the list is long. Even though it's a relatively small institution, still the same length of items that have to be reconciled as you have in any sort of merger. So these are ongoing, and these groups are working now. So as we're in the process of getting the approvals from the state, we're doing this concurrently so that when we have the permission from the state, all these functions will be lined up and will be ready to go in a smooth fashion. So in a number of areas like finance, because of the due diligence, finance, contracting, some aspects of operations and medical staff, and especially, and also graduate medical education, we're far along that path already. So this is a rigorous effort, and to be sure we make for a very smooth and seamless transition, and one that we can replicate as other hospitals come into the system.
I might add one more comment. Because of our experience with the Southampton affiliation agreement and the legal issues and the financial issues, it shouldn't take us 3.5 years to do the other ones.
Very good. And what's, I'm sorry if you said it, I apologize. And what will the name of the hospital be? Will it be Stony Brook Southampton, or will it just be Stony Brook, or?
It will be, we've been having a lot of people.
Oh, is that still undecided?
Well, it's not from our perspective.
So public meeting, so.
Okay.
So that's still being worked out?
How much will we be selling the naming rights for that
We
hospital?
actually
The Kevin Law Southampton Medical Center.
we actually have it centered around, the common theme is it's Stony Brook Medicine at Southampton, and we're working through how the logos go to go along with that. But the folks from Southampton have made it clear they want this to be known as a Stony Brook Medicine presence at the Southampton campus. And so we're working through how the logos go so that the community still feels engaged with their local hospital, but know that it's Stony Brook quality medicine being practiced in their local village.
So Stony Brook Medicine is the umbrella brand, essentially, that encompasses all of our work in the medical field, essentially. So it's a brand that's associated with our hospitals. and I'll say that in plural, a brand, hopefully a brand that's associated with our clinical practices, all of them under the aegis and the umbrella of Stony Brook Medicine.
Well, that's great, and just Sam, for me,
Yeah.
two other just procedural, not procedural, but longer term questions. The game plan is for Southampton to raise money to actually build a new hospital on the Southampton campus. Is that still the game plan for down the road?
That's still a plan. In fact, one of the conditions that SUNY had was that the construction of a new facility was not going to be done with state funds. So neither SUNY nor the state of New York were going to commit to funds to build a new hospital. But that was actually something we'd worked out from the very start in our discussions, that a new hospital would be built with locally generated operating margins and philanthropy.
So you said that neither SUNY nor the state would be contributing, is that what you just said?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And that was a condition essentially laid on by the Department of Budget.
Does that include bonding for it or no?
Pardon?
Does that include borrowing, utilizing the
correct.
state's?
Yes.
But again, that was part, when we initially entered into discussions, we said from the beginning that if a hospital would be built there, that Southampton would raise the money essentially for it. So that was nothing that we changed in the course of the deal. That was the agreement.
Our level of comfort with that has come from it's a high-performing institution, clinically and financially, and they actually have a positive operating margin this year. So we felt comfortable that their level of organization and the additional opportunities we had there made that a reasonable proposition with which to go forward.
Does the current Southampton campus have additional space for a new facility?
No, we're looking at an alternative space that actually would be a better located space for patients to get access. And so the current facility in the arrangement remains the property of the Southampton Association. We lease that space. And when a new facility is constructed, that space reverts to them, and then we will lease the new hospital in its alternative location.
Right, and part of that, they could decide to then sell their current campus and use the proceeds of that to help build the new hospital.
Exactly.
Or to underwrite the debt that's used to build the new
At the
hospital.
alternative site. Would you say, would it be fair to say that this veto power that EHA has is the biggest unknown or the biggest hurdle going forward now, or
Veto power
of not what Ken just told us about?
Just the fact that EHA has to vote to allow Southampton to enter into this affiliation. I don't believe so, because the negotiations by both Peconic and East Long Island Hospital are pretty far advanced with both us and the other to-be-named large hospital affiliation. So one way or another, each of those two hospitals are going to affiliate.
Good. Okay.
Any other questions about this? So again, very exciting and tremendous amount of work from a whole bunch of people went into getting this.
Ken, you should feel good about 3.5 years. It took Jim 7 years to get a subdivision approved out there. And he's an expediter.
Yeah, they were very lucky they hired me. It would have been 3.5 without me.
So we'll have the next thing in my report, we'll have a update on the state budget from Elaine, so I will pass over that, but you have some details in my report that Elaine will present in much more detail. So fundraising continues to be an incredibly important part of what we're doing at Stony Brook, and we have had another very good year, I think, in 2014-15. Dexter, do you want to just kind of update folks on what you've been doing?
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity. Just a few highlights that I wanted to share. So each year we set a fundraising goal for the university. Fiscal year 2015, our fundraising goal is $60 million. And as you'll see in the President's report, as of drafting that document, we're a little bit over 27 million. But I want to tell you a few things that are in process that are probably going to close within the next 30 or so days as we're working. One is a $2 million commitment to our EOP program. You all know the program is really exceptional. It's a national leader. We have an alum that graduated in the 70s, lives in Los Angeles, named Howard Klein, who's going to make a significant endowment commitment to that organization, in addition to some facilities improvements. Friends of University continue to support our mission and our vision going forward. Working with Ken Kashansky's operation, we have another originally non-affiliated person from the community who wants to remain anonymous, is going to do a $1.7 million gift to support medical students. And the range continues. SOMAS, we were just talking about Southampton. In addition to our initiatives there in medicine, we have great programs in School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences. Some examples there, we have an anonymous donor who just created a new professorship at SOMAS, which is the second in their history. The first actually will be installed in March in honor of Carl Safina, who's one of our internationally recognized researchers as well. And then those of you that are familiar with the Georgica Pond area, one of my associates, Deborah Lowenklein's been working with the community there on a project to clean up the pond. And so we've raised over $360,000 for that initiative, and that'll commence soon. We've talked at this group about the Turkana Basin Institute. Through the efforts of Richard Leakey and Lawrence Martin, they've secured $2.3 million in the last 6 weeks to support a $15 million initiative that really advances our research and our education mission between Stony Brook University and what's going on in Kenya. And my list is getting shorter now, I'm getting there. Center Val Bio, yesterday we had a board meeting and announced a $550,000 commitment, which will support Center Val Bio. And our goal there is to raise a $5 million endowment, so this kicks off that endowment initiative. So that's really exciting with Pat Wright and the amazing year she's had. A few scholarships that I'd like to mention, which are really important and really at the core of everything we do, is supporting our students and our faculty. Those of you may remember Chris Algieri, the boxer, and he didn't win that night, but he's won for Stony Brook because he's going to create a scholarship here at Stony Brook. Marcy McGinnis, you guys remember Marcy used to work in School of Journalism. She's creating a scholarship in journalism. And then our very own Lyle and Carol Gomes. I know Carol and her, they've just created a scholarship as well, benefiting our students at the intersection of athletics and medicine. So really a lot of stuff going on. I could talk more, but really a lot of great activity going on. And I think it's also, there's a little nugget that we measure as well in advancement, and that's fulfillment rate. So a lot of the numbers we throw out are individuals making commitments over multiple years, and some schools really struggle with the fulfillment rate. People don't pay their pledges, and ours is close to 100%, which is really unheard of, that people have made commitments to Stony Brook, they're following through, which to me is an endorsement of their commitment to the institution, the leadership, and our mission. So it's really, really great, and it's never enough. I will say that. Sam will probably comment on that at a good time, but we continue to move forward. And then, do you want me to mention galas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So every year, as you know, Stony Brook Foundation, in partnership with Stony Brook University, we do a gala. This year's honoree will be Jane Fonda. Because of her work with the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinity. One of our other outstanding faculty members, Michael Kimmel. So we're looking forward to that on April 22nd. Should be another wonderful event, as those of you who have participated. It's about 700 or 800 people that come to that event. Usually a really, really great and fun night, but we're looking forward to that as well.
It should be a great evening, and Michael Kimmel has been really at the forefront of, cited by a number of people as one of the leaders in working through some of the issues associated with sexual violence on campus and Title IX related issues. So it's very timely to have he and his wisdom essentially showcase at this upcoming event. And we're excited about Jane Fonda.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a question. Dexter, how much is the size of the Stony Brook Endowment, and how does that compare to other SUNYs? Are we sort of in the top tier or middle, or?
Yeah, so compared to the other SUNYs, we're number 2. So Buffalo's endowment's about, Buffalo's total assets is about $800 million. Their endowment, I think, is about $600 million. In comparison, our peer endowment's about $200 million, and total assets is just under $500 million. If you look at our other peer group, the AAUs, that median endowment size is $1.8 billion. So we're way off.
We're at the bottom.
Yes, we're definitely at the bottom with
all AAUs.
With Buffalo, I guess, a little bit. But we're working towards
most of the AAUs are private universities, right?
No, there's 44
No,
public sports.
it's split pretty close.
Is it
But
really?
but
Okay.
older
Yes.
universities.
It's about 32 to 30 public.
32 to
Most are older.
Older,
That's
though.
right.
Yes.
Most of them.
Most.
Yeah.
Most.
And just what's the difference between assets and the endowment itself?
Yeah, so the foundation will have endowment funds, which are pure endowment. They'll have current use funds that are for buildings and current use scholarships and things, and then also things like real estate and other holdings that the foundation will get involved with too. So those are total assets.
Got it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of in the higher education news. So Michael Young, who's the president of the University of Washington, great public institution, left to go to Texas A&M, also a strong public institution, but I would say, I shouldn't say this, I'll say it publicly anyway, I consider the University of Washington, in my opinion, to be a somewhat stronger institution. They're number 2 in the
You're
country in
safe ground.
NIH
Yeah,
research,
yeah.
and so there's reason. Texas A&M very strong engineering programs and agriculture programs. University of Washington, in terms of the national impact, I'd say, in my opinion, is higher. So why did he leave to go from one to the other? Well, it may get paid a little more, but the endowment at Texas A&M, because the state of Texas has essentially put taxes on oil and uses some of that from oil revenues and puts it into the endowment of the University of Texas and Texas A&M. So that's built their endowment tremendously over the years. The endowment at the University of Washington is about a little less than 10 times the endowment at Stony Brook, so it's about $2 billion, a little shy of $2 billion. The endowment at Texas A&M is closer to $6-7 billion. So that makes a difference when you're trying to run a university, because if you just figure a 5% spin-off of $6 billion, there's a lot of discretionary money to have to help run your institution. So you're right in that the privates are the top of the heap,
Yeah.
but Texas is up there,
Right.
Michigan is up there.
Yeah.
So there are some privates that have, publics rather, that have pretty significant endowments, but the top, of course, is Harvard.
Multi-billion.
And Stanford is moving up.
Yeah.
Stanford's Princeton is Princeton still 2? I can't remember. Anyway,
Yeah.
but endowment matters, and yes, and I think that it's something we really are working on. And so I
We
think
don't
part of
have
our
any
fundraising
public
goals-
mechanism as you just described in Texas.
No, I mean, that's, thank you for articulating that. That when I look at that $5 billion that everybody else is looking at, right? The $5 billion surplus that the state had, wouldn't it be nice to kind of, subsidize the infrastructure in some sense of the university, although we have other infrastructure requests for that too. So let me continue. I wanted to talk about, we've had a number of important personnel things that have happened at the university, and people are here today. So the first is that after a nationwide search, I want to say that I'm so pleased that David Conover, who was interim vice president for research, will be the vice president for research at Stony Brook University. David is here. Please join me. David really did a spectacular job over the 13 months when he was interim, and the search committee, I think, recognized all of his accomplishments, and he is a great partner and one of the most vital components of the university. It's something we talk about a lot. Research. Stony Brook is a research university. He is really responsible for the research apparatus on the campus, both to enhance our research as well as to make sure we're in compliance with all the federal and other regulations that we have to deal with. So it's a very important job, and I'm really pleased that David is here. And then we met him in the introductions. I created a new office, Vice President for Communications, and the inaugural holder of that position will be Nicholas Chavetta. Nicholas, please join me in welcoming Nicholas. Nicholas has a big portfolio. It's in your report. Nicholas came to us from Ketchum Public Relations, where he really created, implemented, and grew Ketchum's global media network. There's always something interesting happening at Stony Brook. As I say, both good news and bad news that we have to deal with sometimes. So Nicholas has already had a baptism of fire in this, and I've enjoyed working with him already. I think he's going to do a fantastic job for us. Mary Trular has been named Dean of the School of Dental Medicine. Mary was an interim also, but after a national search, she was selected as Dean, and Ken's over there. She's fantastic. I know Mary very well, and she's going to do a great job at the dental school. And then Yaakov Shamash, who's not here today, will be going full-time in the position of Vice President for Economic Development. So Yaakov had this interesting thing where he was Dean of the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. At the same time, he was also Vice President for Economic Development. Given all that's happening with entities like Startup New York, our new mezzanine building, we made the decision that we should really have Yaakov going full-time on economic development, and under Dennis's direction, we will do a search now for a new Dean of the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and I know, Dennis, you're getting that search together. So if Yaakov was here, we could thank him for all his work as Dean. He will continue in that position until a successor is found. He also will be working with SUNY Central because of his expertise, again, related to engineering and training. He will be a special advisor to the Chancellor for STEM education and research, a real distinction for him. Last, but certainly not least, Barbara Chernow, the Senior Vice President for Administration, is going to return to her alma mater, Brown University, to become Executive Vice President for Administration. This is a tremendous opportunity for Barbara, who's done so much for the university. She is, has one step at Stony Brook, one foot in Brown, one foot in Stony Brook, one foot in Brown, but she's here today to do her final report on capital planning. I can't tell you, we will have a special party for Barbara very soon, but I can't tell you how much she's meant to the institution, not only in her skillful handling of everything related to administration, but her taking on a Project 50 Forward, which is probably one of the most important initiatives at the university as we've continued to push for operational excellence and efficiency. That's an initiative that has saved more than $34 million in ongoing costs over the past 3 years. So Barbara, on behalf of all of us here, thank you so much for everything you've done. So, see if there's anything else I wanted to cover here. As usual, there's a great group of faculty and student accomplishments, which I encourage you to read about. I think those are really the main things that I wanted to talk about. Soledad O'Brien will be coming, the award-winning journalist documentarian will be coming on February 16th at 6 p.m. at the Stoller Center to continue her Black in America tour. And she will cover a number of important issues, including issues around violence and the interactions between the police and young men of color. So I think it should be a very interesting discussion. It's great at a university to be able to have these kinds of discussions and open things up, and we look forward to a great
Her
presentation.
mother was my Spanish teacher in high school.
That is so cool. So February 16th, yeah, she's a Long Island, she lives on Long Island, has 4 kids. I think all go to school there, so it's great. So I'm going to stop there and answer any questions that anybody has.
Has the Suffolk County Police Department been told about this? They have representatives?
We have talked to our police department. I don't know if we've talked to Suffolk County about it, so we certainly ran it by our police.
It might be a good idea, just to let them know.
Sure. I think that's a good idea. We do that. Thank you, Jim. Okay. So now me again. So on the agenda, let me talk about SUNY 2020. And I'll make this relatively brief, but it's very important. So Elaine will talk about, Barbara will talk about capital planning, Elaine will talk about executive budget, but I wanted to tell you what our #1 goal is, at least my #1 goal is in the upcoming legislative session. And that is to get SUNY 2020 extended, to have essentially an extension of the SUNY 2020 plan. So for those of you who tuned in late, SUNY 2020 was the bill that was put forward, proposed by the governor, supported by the legislature, and it really represented a change in how we do business for higher education in the state, for public higher education. And what it proposed was, instead of the former way in which we dealt, particularly with tuition, where the legislature would consider it when it wanted to consider it or felt it was appropriate to consider it, where there was no prediction of what the tuition would be. There was no way for families to know what the tuition would be in the coming year. So there were examples where tuition could raise 35 or 40% in a year, then go up again 2 years later. But there were other circumstances where tuition didn't change over a 6-year period. So it was like a tuition roulette, essentially, where you never knew what was going to happen to tuition ongoing. And the tuition raising often was not coinciding with when things were needed for the university, and when the state increased its allocation, or rather when the state cut budgets, then it raised tuitions as opposed to continuing a steady support of the universities. So what SUNY 2020 did was 2 things. One, it set a rational tuition plan. It said tuition will increase by these percentages each year over a 5-year period, so families and students could plan for these tuition increases and be ready and know what their cost of attendance was going to be going forward. Secondly, as I said, it capped the tuition increases. So it said the tuition will not increase more than this in any given year. And campuses actually had the ability to raise less than that, but it said they will not increase by this more than any year. It also increased out-of-state tuition to a higher level than it increased in-state tuition as well. And there was a very important clause put in there by the government, by the legislature, which was a maintenance of effort clause that said essentially that with this increase in tuition, that the budget would not be cut for the state's allocation, the state component of it, then to make up for the increases in tuition to allow the state to pull away from its support of higher education. And that maintenance effort has been incredibly important. So we think this has been transformational for Stony Brook. We have used this money to really help students, and that was part of what was in this thing, was a compact essentially between the universities and students, that the money that came from SUNY 2020 would be primarily used to support students and student services, and that's what we've done. So we've used it to hire additional academic advisors, financial aid counselors, and instructors, which has been very important. We have new graduate teaching assistant positions that are allowing us to add 110 sections. So one of the challenges for our students was, can you get the courses you need to graduate? Are there enough sections? So we've used this money to add more graduate students and more TAs so we can have more class sections, and that's been very important going forward. We've also increased graduate student stipends to about $2,000 annually to make us more competitive with our AAU peers. As you know, graduate students are an important part of the teaching and the research, and so this has been an important use of the dollars. We've added faculty, and that's really been at the heart of this initiative. More faculty so we can teach more students. We have lowered our student-faculty ratio from 28 to 1 to 25 to 1. That's significant on our campus. We have hired about 200 net new faculty members across the campus. That's incredible. It's allowing us both to hire new people as well as to renew the faculty to bring new blood essentially to the faculty. Has been great. And we've added 19 new degree and advanced certificate programs. We have 22 more in the pipeline, so we're giving students more options as they're going forward, more things that may help them in their careers going forward. And all of this has come without any suffering in quality, and in fact, without any, you might be concerned that increasing the price might reduce applications or hurt our opponents. That's not been the case. We set a record number of applications in 2014-15, continuing an upward trend. Nearly 34,000 students applied to Stony Brook. We had about 2,855 of those enrolled. The quality of the students has continued to go up. The average GPA is now 90 to 96. Average math between 610 and 710. SAT critical readings between 540 and 650. ACTs between 26 and 30. So all of these things have been incredibly important. At the same time, Stony Brook, to the extent even higher than other SUNY schools, has helped the most economically disadvantaged students. So we have used some of this new tuition money to provide scholarship support, particularly to families earning under $70,000 a year. So we've made sure that students, especially in that age, in that income group, were held harmless from the tuition increases. So we haven't pulled away from our commitment to access. So this has been a really important thing. It expires at the end of this year. We would like to see it renewed now. So you'd be renewing it essentially, in the year before it expires, but we'd like to see it renewed now. There's a number of reasons for that, but we think this is the right time to renew it. Again, it'll allow for planning for us. I didn't talk about that, but one of the great things for us has been if one knows one's revenue coming forward, one can borrow against revenue if one has things to do. If you know that your revenue is going up a particular amount in a certain year, it allows you to be much more flexible in your fiscal planning. So we really don't want to lose the predictable tuition advantage. We want to have this kind of financial stability that this has brought for the university. And we think it's a great competitive thing for us, again, to be able to tell students this is what your tuition would be in 2016 and 17. Because our tuition still remains so low, we're the second lowest tuition in the AAU. We're in the bottom 10 of total cost of attendance in the AAU, so we remain incredibly affordable. We want to be able to trumpet this, but it's good to be able to trumpet what the actual number is. So it's really important to try and do this. I think we have some support in the legislature for getting this done this year, but it's going to be, I won't say it'll be easy. It wasn't easy to get it done the first time, but really be looking for support, and we've been talking already to the students and student government. Gary's nodding about the possibility of getting their support and moving this forward as well. One of the great things about last time was there was student support for SUNY 2020, and students are really pretty far-sighted, I think, and recognize that the quality of their degree is incredibly important. That nobody wants to pay more. Of course you don't want to pay more. But you also want to have quality to your degree, essentially. You want to have a degree that really will have the most powerful market effect as you start to look for that next job. And so the better your educational experience at Stony Brook is, the higher the quality of your degree, the better your options are, both in terms of graduate school and moving forward. So students really, I think, recognize this. They also recognize last time the arguments about adding more sections to help people graduate, and we've seen increases in our 4- and 6-year graduation rates after SUNY 2020 was introduced, consistent with what we talked about. So we're looking for support there. Last time we had support from our students, and we had support from the SUNY student government as a whole, supported the idea of doing the SUNY 2020 plan. So we're looking for that again. So that's kind of my summary. Elaine, anything you want to add to that?
No, you've covered it, and
Okay.
we'll be up in Albany. My staff's up there today, actually, kicking it off, so.
Yeah.
Did the governor include the extension of it in his budget? So it's going to have to be standalone?
It was
And-
standalone last time, Kevin. It was a post-budget item last time.
I know, but now would have been the time to include it in the budget to
Since it
make
worked.
it easier.
Yeah.
But obviously it didn't do that, so.
We asked.
Okay.
We asked. We hope that would be the case.
And it expires at the end of this year?
At the end of this, 2016.
2016.
2016 expires. So we're doing a year early. Yeah.
And is there a way to, increase it permanently, or are we just looking for another 3 or 4 year?
I think
5-year?
5, yeah. I think we're looking for another 5-year extension. We think that makes sense. I think, economic conditions can change. I think this is, but I think again, we are still at the bottom. We're the lowest, so only Florida is lower than us in tuition in the AAU. If you count the total cost of attendance, you count the fees we charge as well, then we're still in the bottom 10 of the 62 AAU schools. So it's still an incredible bargain by, I think, any standards. I think that it's vitally important, I think, for the future.
No, it'd be,
I was going to say Alabama must have come up. I remember it was Florida and Alabama last time.
So Alabama's not an AAU.
Oh,
so
is that
so
why?
yeah,
Okay.
so they're not an AAU. But Florida's the lowest. They went up 15% per year. So they had a thing to go up 15% per year. So if they keep on that pace, they will pass us. But as I say, it's probably fair to count the fees. So it's probably fair, honestly. And if you want to be, it makes a stronger case to say the lowest tuition, but it's probably fair to count the fees as well. So if you count the fees, then we're still in the bottom.
I got 2 questions that I probably should know the answer to.
Yeah, that's
You
okay.
had- Does 2020 apply across the SUNY system, or not community colleges?
No, not community colleges. So it
No.
applies to all but the community colleges. And what's been interesting is that there are a few schools that probably believe they've seen some enrollment diminution with the increases in tuition, particularly out-of-state tuition. So always built into it was you could raise up to this amount and not more. And I think that's going to be important as we move forward again. I think some schools may not want to increase their tuition as much under the plan because they may feel that it impacted their
But they don't have to.
They don't have to. They don't have to.
Second question, you talked about borrowing against anticipated revenues.
Yeah.
The university here doesn't have bonding powers. You have to rely on.
It goes through the state. Goes through the state.
The
But
dormitory,
we can
whatever?
borrow. We can borrow basically through our internal. We have small amounts of cash reserves on hand. So what one can do is one can feel comfortable borrowing against those cash reserves if one knows
A
increased
traditional-
revenue.
traditional
coming through.
borrowing, not that
So
bonding.
exactly. So it's internal borrowing, not.
Yeah,
And Sam, do other SUNYs have similar track records of Stony Brook in terms of results we could point to?
Great question.
And
Great
I hope
question.
that's part of the lobbying
Great question.
strategy.
It will be. I know Buffalo, Binghamton, Albany are all putting together for the University Center Strong program. The University Centers had an extra academic excellence fee, so we think it's important that we deliver even more. I haven't seen all the data yet from the other SUNYs. I don't know if you've seen it, Elaine. Do you want to
I
comment?
have, and
Yeah.
it's comparable. We're trying to highlight the same types of success stories at the 4U centers. And
Right.
the data is very comparable. They have a good story to tell.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really made a difference, and I hope, Gary's nodding again. I think it's really made a difference to the university.
From the
A lot of
legislature's
population.
perspective, what's the negative? I mean,
I think
it's a
just,
good
I
budget.
think that it is a great question, Frank. I think anytime you just talk about raising something,
Yeah.
there's always an issue. And, there will be some parents and students who are concerned about the price of college in general.
Right.
Again, we do very well, I think, on all those parameters. And our job, our goal is really to deliver, as I said before, a high quality
Right.
education as well, and that's very important. But I think that's where the pushback might come from legislators who are concerned about an increase there.
Gotcha.
I think getting the maintenance effort clause kept in is really important. Because that's really made a big difference.
So there's been no negatives that have, through this process
I'm
that
unaware.
you've been
Again,
able to identify?
I think we've talked to some students and parents who have said, it's good to know what the costs are going to be going forward. Over this 4-year period, it's nice to be able to plan ourselves and know this is what's going to cost. So
Absolutely.
it's not going to go up 30% next
Right.
year. At the privates, many of them raise, according to what
huge
they need and
jumps.
so on. Exactly. So it's nice to know that this is what the tuition is going to be next year. Do your planning for it. I think that's helpful. So I think it's, I think that's the main thing that I would say. Good. Okay.
Any other questions for Sam? Well, Sam, it was a great President's Report and a great update on the SUNY 2020. And in fact, LIA, we should make the SUNY 2020 part of our priorities too.
That would be fantastic.
It wasn't included
Yeah,
in that.
I would love that.
Actually, we're sending it to the printer on Friday, so we'll have to update that.
Yeah.
So that's good. Let the record reflect, Councilmember Linda Arman has joined us. Linda, thank you. I'm sure the icy roads were fun this morning for you as well. We're now going to get a capital plan update from Barbara Chernow.
Thank you. So speaking of money, a lot of what you see around campus, thank you Fred for laughing, we are able to build and renovate our buildings based on a capital budget. So even though this title is for fiscal year 2015-2016, some of the things I'm going to show you are based on capital money we got in previous years. And it ends very happily with pictures of what we've done with it since 2009. So get ready. So, funding sources. There are basically 3 types of funding we get to build and renovate our buildings. The first, as John knows, is the SUNY capital money. The second is when we can borrow from the dormitory authority, which Peter does at the right time to renovate and build the residence halls. And then philanthropy, which Dexter told you some about. So those are the big sources of money that we use. Then the governor's executive budget proposal does the following for us this fiscal year. We'll get $41.2 million. That's 22.2 of things we can prioritize, and 19 million for the student union. Lou and Elaine and I have been working with the construction fund and Peter for many, many years because the student union is in desperate need of a complete rehab. So you'll see soon that we are designing it, and then we have money to then go to construction when the design is complete. The plan is administered by the SUNY Construction Fund, so they're the ones that Lou asks for release of money. They're the ones where Lou writes them and explains why we need it, and they're the ones that we court, and they're very helpful to us. But projects can be both managed by the university, which is by Lou or Ken's people on the other side of the street, or the construction fund could manage the projects as well. So in any given building, you could have the construction fund doing a part of it, we could be doing a part of it, or we could be working next to each other in other buildings. So let's talk about capital projects that are in progress. In other words, we got money in previous years to do the work. So for Stoller and Fine Arts, we are now doing a program study to detail the infrastructure that's needed. Some of you probably know in the last few years we've had some floods from the HVAC system, and we've had to replace parts of the stage, and then one year we had to replace all the stage. Chemistry, there are mechanical systems. Where's Dennis? He reminds me often that work needs to be done in the chemistry building, so we have the construction firm managing that study. The numbers to the right are what we think the whole project will cost. So no way am I implying that the study for fine arts will be $54 million, which is what I thought Chris you'd ask me about.
Nah, that'd be some study.
So design, we're doing, Gary will be happy to hear this, we are doing a design for the interior rehab of the Javits building. We're replacing the windows in psych. We're doing, as I said, a complete rehab in the student union. And we're going to replace air handlers in this building. So someday, Sam, you're not going to say it's too hot, it's too cold, because the air handlers will be replaced. Are you going to ask a question?
No, I'm looking forward to that day.
Plazas are very important, even though today I'm sure you saw how wonderful our roads and plazas were. There are some plazas that are in need of repair. David Conover calls me frequently about one of them, but we have money now to design the ESS Plaza and the Math and Physics Plaza. We're also working, and all of you know about this, the new building in the R&D Park that we used to call the mezzanine and we're now calling the Innovation and Discovery Center. And last but not least, we've had money for several years for a Southampton sewage treatment plant, and that was in design as well. Any questions? In construction, these are the really exciting things. So Ken, you can tell them all about the MART and the bed tower, but that project is going very, very well. And as you can see, the whole project is slated to cost $424 million. We also have a new animal biosafety lab for $14 million. Carol Gomes is doing a fabulous job getting that project in. We are renovating the Pritchard Gym pool, which we believe can be done for $14 million, and there's some things, but that's not here. But there might be other people that want to contribute to that project. We are upgrading research labs in many buildings. The chemistry roof, the construction fund has been working on replacing it. We had a problem with the contractor. Now Lumen's parents are going to be doing some work, and then hopefully the construction fund could come back with a new contractor and complete that roof. HSC deck has been under construction by the fund to rehab that. That's going well now. We're replacing air handlers in physics, replacing equipment in the West Plant. That is my personal favorite, to make sure the lights stay on. We're replacing electric feeders all over the campus, again, to make sure the lights stay on. We're adding chillers to the East Power Plant, and a new residence hall will be built in 2 phases. When complete, it'll be 757 beds and a 60,000 square foot dining hall. Okay, now let's talk about what we requested. This isn't necessarily what we're going to get, but this is what we requested. And as you remember, we got $41 million for sure, but hopefully the legislature and others, with Elaine's prodding, may give us some more money. So if they do, this is our request. A high-performance computing center, 2 buildings for engineering, a school of pharmacy, a new SOMAS building, a new life science building, the addition to SAC, and a stadium expansion. So these are new buildings and additions. So I'm going to talk about this in categories. This is the first. Then we want to do some building renovations. As you can see on top of this list is the student union. And then we want to do things in chemistry and Scholar and computer science, Javits, Harriman, and Psych. Remember I told you in design we have windows in Psych, and then we want to move to an interior rehab. And this is the other stuff in another, what we call bucket of plazas, mechanical systems, a lot of energy conservation, and roadway repair. So now let's talk about the great stuff. Since 2009, we have been very fortunate to be a part of either renovating fields, renovating buildings, or building new ones. So as you can see, the Simon Center is on the left, and then we went to the Laufer Center, and then Jubin came along and helped with a donation, and we created that and Joe Nathan baseball field. Bioengineering, CWIT, Southampton Marine Sciences, Air Tech. You know, I should have tested you all to see if you knew the name. And then West Dining, Southampton Library, Fry Hall, and the Rec Center. And the rec fields, which Peter was a big proponent of, Nobel Halls, the Arena, West Apartments, and that's it. Any questions?
So at one point, I summarized this, I think, in a report. I don't know if I gave you this body or not, but I did before. We had about $800 million going on in projects around the university, and essentially thousands of jobs, construction jobs for the region. So this has really, I think, been important. And if one goes back to the times when things were very difficult, so in the economy, when the economy was in bad shape, I think for the construction industry, Stony Brook was a life preserver essentially thrown out there, because thanks again to the capital funds that we got through your tax dollars, we were able to continue to build and continue to provide jobs during that time. So I think that was very important. I think people lose track of that sometimes. So this capital, the capital plan, so we had a 5-year capital plan before, that was really transformational to the university. And one of the things we're pushing for again is to have another 5-year plan. So we really would love the governor to agree to another 5-year capital plan for SUNY, because it really does touch every part of the state. There's a SUNY campus essentially all throughout the state. Stony Brook, I would say, I don't think I'm being remiss here, we really utilize our dollars. So there are some schools that haven't utilized their dollars perhaps to the extent we have. We have an incredible number of critical maintenance needs. Barbara, went through it very quickly. But, we have a campus, right, it's from the 60s and 70s, a lot of the buildings. We have tremendous critical maintenance needs, the utility feeders, hot chillers. I've learned all this stuff since I've come here. We have tremendous needs in this area. And, we had better support in the past. So our number was in the $75 million range.
75 million, and as you can see, this year it's 41.
75 million for critical maintenance. This year it's 41. If we weren't getting an additional 19, it would be 22. So that's a significant reduction, and yet the number of things we have to do on our campus is just growing all the time. And we try and put safety first. We try and put keeping the lights on and heat and water and all those things first. But there's also areas where, there's safety related to uneven pavement, and there's safety related to buildings that aren't as lit as well as they should be. There's a lot of issues that we have around the campus, and so this is a critical part for us. Barbara has done a great job with Lou's able assistance and really managing all of this effort. So think about it, $800 million going on campus, so managing this effort is extraordinary. They've done a great job, but frankly, we need more resources to really do it well.
So if I could underscore what Sam was
Yeah.
saying, when, before Sam got here, there was, Peter could tell you, many a graduation where we didn't have showers, hot water in the residence halls for our students, or we didn't have lights on. And because of that, we were able to demonstrate to the construction fund that we needed to do the feeders, and we needed to do high temperature hot water. And Sam is right, if we don't get the money that we need to keep our campus afloat, we're gonna go back to those times. So it's very good what we've done, but we really need to keep that critical maintenance money flowing, or we'll go back to the days of no hot water, no lights, and it's not great.
Not related, but this was more of a budget story. But my favorite one was the Statesman story of when they ran out of toilet paper in Stony Brook, and
That's an operating expense.
That's an operating expense.
That's not capital.
Right.
Apparently, Marburger actually, was driving up to wherever the local store was to bring back supplies for them. So Jack was actually charged. But at any rate,
Presidential duties.
we don't want to go back to that.
No,
Those
we don't.
times.
And last week, we actually had
That's a big Costco trip.
Somebody grabbed the.
Kevin, I know you're gonna say how could you help, so this is how. Last week, we had a
Hey,
water
I heard you
break.
say that.
And I'm gonna ask you to help too, Jim.
All right.
So I just want you to know
I
that
can
I
ask
think the campus looks great, and with Sam's support, it's been a pleasure working here. But we really need money to continue it, because the water main break of last week and other things could really set us back. But Elena's going to Albany to get us that money.
Elaine, before you get up,
The check is in the mail.
just with Barb, Sam said it before. For the last 16 years, you've done an amazing job here. You've always been very responsive to all the members of the council, and you could walk on any aspect of the 3 different sides of this campus or Southampton and see your fingerprints on something positive, and so on behalf of the council, we want to recognize you. And we have one of our council flags. Thank you for everything you've done for us. We're going to miss you, and we wish you a lot of good luck. And I think I saw something in the email. Red goes to Brown. Quite appropriate. So we wish you a lot of luck at Brown.
Thank you very,
Not too
very
much luck in lacrosse, though.
I'll make sure they don't do anything.
Here's a little thing. You got a photo there, Laura?
All right, I need some stilts. Does Sam will remind me?
Kevin.
No.
Kevin, not me.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay, next up.
What's the plan to replace her? Because, she's
Impossible.
Because she's been like, I remember this,
Yeah.
Kevin and I remember this campus from 20 years ago before we had Barbara. She's been the driving force of this campus. Probably one of the most competent people I've ever met in government, not including Kevin and Jim. But what's the plan?
So we'll do a national search for the position, and we've already started. We've identified a search firm and put together a search committee. We will have in the meantime, a number of people will step up. So Lou has responsibility for facilities, essentially. Already in the administrative structure, Lyle and Lynn Johnson. So Lyle is for VP for Finance, and Lynn Johnson, who is VP for HR, already had a dotted line reporting relationship for me, so that will continue from that point. And things like the police and public safety will report to Matt Whalen, the Vice President for the Chief of Initiatives, and Matt has gotten to know that side of the area as well. Did I leave anything out?
No, that's
Okay, and so yeah, there's no replacement, as you said, Chris, you're absolutely right. But we will make do, and we'll try and recruit somebody outstanding. But one of the things that is helpful is that when your predecessor went to a great organization, it helps us recruit. So the fact that Barbara's going to Brown, a great institution in the Ivy League, tells people in the same way that my former provost became president of the University of Minnesota, tells people that Stony Brook is a quality place that believes in excellence and helps us recruit the next people. So I think that's going to be important.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is. So Barbara, by going to such a great place, you'll help us recruit.
The Commissioner of Public Works.
Brown's classes are canceled today, and they're expecting 18 inches of snow. So when you drive home later, don't complain too much.
3-day storm.
Thanks again, Barb.
Yeah.
All right, next up is Elaine with an update on the 2015-16 executive budget.
Thanks, Kevin, and thank you for the opportunity to bring you up to date on what the governor proposed in his executive budget summary in late January. So, but we also have some other news from Albany, and this is very exciting for Stony Brook and for the state. Assemblyman Carl Hasty is the newly elected Speaker of the Assembly. He's the first African-American speaker, and he's a Stony Brook alum from 1990. He's also joined in the Assembly by 2 new Assembly members who are also Stony Brook alum. And we went up to Albany and we got this nice picture, and they're very excited to serve the state of New York, and we're excited to have them.
Who are the others?
So it's Assemblywoman Kimberly Jean Pierre from Wheatley Heights and Assemblywoman Latoya Joyner from the Bronx. They're both, one got their, Assemblywoman Latoya Joyner got her BA at Stony Brook in 2008. And Assemblywoman Jim Pierre got her MS in Public Policy in 2007. So, and they joined the other Stony Brook alum up there, Steve Engelbright. And so it's very exciting to have so many alums representing the state of New York. And I wanted to just share with you a little bit more information about the new speaker.
Before becoming State Assembly Speaker, he was Carl Hasty, Stony Brook student. And friends trace Hasty's political rise to the Suffolk County College.
We were just students who were very conscious, socially conscious, and active.
With Public Enemy off in the soundtrack, Hasty and friends fought to divest Sunni from firms doing business in South Africa. He also led a minority student group, growing it to include Asian, gay, and lesbian students.
I think we all were different than we left. Stony Brook gave a lot of us the opportunity to find that inner leader in ourselves.
And find an escape from the city's crack-fueled violence. More than 2,200 people were murdered in 1990. Hasty, pictured here in the Yankees cap, came from the Bronx, from a middle-class family. Even with murder at a record low, Stony Brook is still seen as a haven, with its bucolic, studious quiet.
We're beyond excited that we have someone who understands the challenges that our students face.
There's not a lot of us here, and the clubs and organizations that do this for people of color try their best.
The school is 6% black, about the same percentage during Hasty's time, although the raw numbers have grown. Still, the Black World newspaper doesn't appear as vibrant. During Hasty's time, it was a reliable mirror into students' racial identity. Hasty penned articles, including one about himself, written in the third person.
But it wasn't all so sincere. This is college, after all, so
There was plenty of talk about sports and girls, plus playing a version of Nintendo that would probably look quaint to Stony Brook students now.
Played a mean game of Tecmo Bowl.
And as friend Wayne Andrews flipped through the yearbook this week, he made a notable find. On the page for Black World, a plea for more state aid. It was addressed to the State Assembly Speaker, the very position that Carl Hasty, class of '90, has now. In Stony Brook, New York, Josh Robin, New York.
Yeah, that's great.
So this is where we're going to remind the new speaker of his letter to the former speaker when we're up there. And I have to tell you, I met with some student leaders last week about SUNY 2020, and we shared the story of the new speaker and that he's an alum from Stony Brook, and you could see how excited they were that, you know, somebody who sort of held their positions had risen to such a level of prominence in state government. So we're going to bring a contingent of our students up to meet with the speaker at least once or twice this session, so it should be fun. So getting back to the executive budget proposal, I'm going to start with the university's operating budget. Excuse me, I'm trying to stay away from the camera here. And the most significant thing about the proposed budget is that it, for the first time, shifts funding from a strict formula based on our enrollment to performance measures. And it takes this approach in both a carrot and a stick manner. So the first proposal would withhold 10% of our state support, which is about $15 million for Stony Brook University, from each campus, pending approval of what the budget calls a performance improvement plan, where the university is asked to show how it's going to improve access, completion rates, academic and postgraduate success, how we're going to improve research, and what we're doing in terms of community engagement. So once the plan is approved, they would release the state support. Then as the year progresses, there's a pot of $18 million in performance-based funding that's system-wide. Stony Brook's share would be about $3 million, and we would have access to that pot of money if we meet some of the metrics laid out in our plan, and they're going to pay particular attention to making experience-based learning a requirement for graduation, and the steps we undertake to implement that. Steps we take to encourage our researchers to by rewarding them for bringing in research funding. And there's also, the money can be used to fund bonuses for university presidents who show particular expertise in startup New York and resulting, taking research and turning it into commercialized products. So the other aspects of the university operating budget is that once again it fails to cover salary increases for the negotiated contracts. For Stony Brook, that means we will have to contribute about $8.1 million to cover the salary increases in the upcoming fiscal year. Last year, if you remember, the governor's budget did not include money for the salary increases either. And the legislature during the budget process had added $7.6 million system-wide to cover some of those costs. And the governor's budget proposal seeks to eliminate the money put in last year for those increases.
Elaine, back up. So Stony Brook doesn't negotiate the labor contracts. The state does, but then they don't provide the funding for the awards that they negotiate?
Correct. They expected to take it out of our existing operating budget.
Sort of like that unfunded mandates.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
We actually went up last year and argued that this somehow violated the maintenance of effort provision that was in the SUNY 2020 legislation. And the division of the budget's position was that they had agreed to hold our funding flat, and that this was an increase, and that we were to absorb the increase. So they are holding true to that philosophy in this proposed budget. And we'll see what how the legislature responds. Obviously, last time, our message resonated with them, but they could only come up with $7.6 million system-wide. You can see that wasn't very popular on the first floor or the second floor of the Capitol, since they sought to eliminate that
But that was
money.
system-wide. It's an $8 million hit for us this year.
Yes, correct, for Stony Brook.
So
And that's on
system-wide.
top of, so now
Yes,
this
shit.
year, we're gonna be paying $15
Compound.
million more, close to $16 million more than we were last year, the year before last, rather.
So much for the hot water.
Well, this is operating.
On the
I'll get to
top.
capital in a minute. It's also pretty bleak, I have to say. So the Centers of Excellence usually receive some operating funds from the state, and the governor proposes to fund them at the same level as last year's enacted budget. Same thing for the Centers for Advanced Technology on our campus and elsewhere in the system. The Long Island State Veterans Home got an increase in its appropriation authority. This is allowing us to spend the revenue that the Vets Home takes in. The Marine Animal Lab usually receives about $333,000. The governor's budget did not include that money. It's never included in his budget. It's a legislative add-on. So we will be asking the legislature to add that back again. There's no across-the-board increase in TAP. Last year they had increased the TAP award slightly. There's no proposed increase this year, although the executive budget does include $27 million in additional funding to support those who would be eligible under the DREAM Act. The governor's made the DREAM Act one of his priorities this session. There's no increase for the EOP AIM program. Last year, so the governor funded it the same level as he proposed last year. Again, last year the legislature added $1.28 million. We will be asking the legislature to add that back, if not some more. Turning to the university.
Can I?
Yep.
Right. At the beginning, Elaine, you spoke about carrot and sticks. And this is the executive's proposed budget. We know that the governor has made proposals for public school funding based on other criteria that have been controversial. Is there, first of all, it sounded as you went over it, mostly sticks. And well, the one carrot that I saw was and our president should do well on the Startup New York, because we've done well on that. Has there been any pushback, or is there any opposition to some of the sticks? And the second question, when we talk about negotiating the budget, we're part of a system.
Correct.
How much do we negotiate at Stony Brook, and how much are we constrained as being part of SUNY?
So let me answer. I think with respect to the withholding of state support and then the performance incentive fund, the system seems to be accepting that proposal from the governor. As we engage in our advocacy efforts, we have to be mindful of the powers of each house as it relates to the governor's executive budget. It gets a little dicey as to what the legislature can actually remove from the budget proposal. It really comes down to whether or not it's in the appropriation bill or whether or not it's in what's called an Article 7 bill. We have more ability to delete language from an Article 7 bill than we do from the actual appropriation bill. So that said, it's going to be very difficult to undo that proposal that the governor has put forth with the carrot and the stick.
And when you advocate, do you do it as Stony Brook, or do you do it as part of all of the schools in the system?
So where we have consensus, we join with the system, and when there are specific Stony Brook items, we go off and we advocate for Stony Brook's best interest. Absolutely.
So I think it was a really good point. I mean, I think that the carrot that Elaine was referring to earlier was about there is some new money, essentially, potentially in state allocation that one would compete for, so that's new money as opposed to, but that's much smaller than what they've done in setting aside current money and making that performance-based. And I'll just speak on behalf of all the presidents. When this was originally brought to us, this notion of performance-based funding, we pushed very hard, and I led the notion that we didn't have a problem so much with performance-based funding, but it should be new money, that it didn't make sense to us to have us compete for money we already have. That particularly if schools are not performing well, then to cut their funds further may not be the right approach. Now, that depends on what the problems are, but cut it further may not be the right approach. So our feeling was that performance-based funding should be part of new money to support new initiatives. That was my feeling. That if you care about things, you should hold presidents accountable for the performance of their campus. So if you don't think a given campus is graduating at high enough rates, I'm not sure reducing the money to that campus makes sense, but I think getting rid of that president potentially does make sense if they're not performing. And I think I and my colleagues, I think, are happier with that type of approach to the issues. Because I think, as I said before, that what you want to do is you want to incent things by bringing new money essentially into the system. So they did part of that, but then they made 10% of everybody's budget now based on these performance parameters. We were allowed to suggest what the performance parameters should be for our campus, so we're allowed to take a look at areas that we want to work on. So graduation rates are really important to us, and that's something we're going to be in on. We've talked about utilities, utility savings again as part of our performance base. Research dollars, fundraising potentially for us because we think external can be. So we've set some parameters that we think would be consonant with some of the things that we're trying to push very hard at Stony Brook. But it's a challenge the way it was put in, and I don't think it reflects certainly what the presidents wanted in terms of how they saw this performance-based funding.
And we'll know more about the Chancellor's position with respect to all of this. She's testifying tomorrow before the legislative budget hearing at around 9:30. So, she has let us know that part of her testimony will be seeking an extension of SUNY 2020. So.
And she's very supportive of that. So she's
Absolutely.
Very supportive.
So, turning now to the capital budget, as Barbara alluded to, the executive budget proposal falls short in our estimation when it comes to critical maintenance allocations. The budget proposes $200 million for critical maintenance system-wide. It's generally about $500 million system-wide. Last year it was $402 million system-wide in the enacted budget. So this is a paltry amount as far as we're concerned. Stony Brook's share, as Barbara alluded to, would be about $22 million. Our base was usually between $70 and $74 million annually. So we'll be going to the legislature with a very high priority to ask them to triple the governor's budget allocation of $200 million to make it $600 million. But our argument really is going to be that there's this money, there's this $5 billion that the legislature would let, and the governor have said should be spent on infrastructure. Some of that infrastructure, those infrastructure needs are on our campuses, and we're going to make that argument to the legislature.
Can I just say one thing? SUNY 4 or 5 years ago did a study to look at the backlog of deferred maintenance, and in terms of campus centers, Stony Brook's valuation of what it needs to deal with its backlog was more than Albany, Binghamton, and Buffalo combined.
So there was some good news in the critical maintenance section of the governor's budget, and that is there was the additional $19 million for Stony Brook. That was part of the resolution of the Gyrodyne matter. So we had worked out a 3-year resolution of that issue, and this is the third and final installment of that resolution.
Guys, are you all familiar with that? The state condemned the Gyrodyne facility for the Stony Brook campus, and it was litigated, and a huge $100 million award was granted to the owners of the property. And then the state had to, by law, fund it, but they took it out of Stony Brook's essentially capital budget and then agreed to pay it back over 3 years. So here, Elaine's confirming that the state lived up to its commitment and made us whole during a 3-year period.
Correct.
Which was very fortunate because it was very scary at the time when they were looking to Stony Brook to fund this award, condemnation award.
Correct, thanks, Kevin. And some more good news in the capital projects section of the budget. There was $26 million included for Stony Brook and BNL supercomputer project. And there's an overall commitment in the budget briefing book for $65 million over a period of time for BNL. We hope to build on this proposal by the governor and by asking the legislature to add some $50 million to this so that we can build a high-performance computing center on the R&D park that would be used in consideration with BNL and Cold Spring Harbor Lab. So there is another round of the capital portion of SUNY 2020. It would be round 5. There's $55 million system-wide. This is something that you have to submit a grant application for. Those are the 3 criteria. You have to show that you're going to use it for technology to expand online learning and academic success. It has to somehow leverage Startup New York and provide more experience-based learning opportunities for our students. We've been working with Cole and Charlie Robbins here. This is the same criteria that was available in round 4. The round 4 grant applications are due in May. So we may be now thinking about a 2-year funding application over this year and next. This is capital money only. There is no operating funds available for this project.
Out of the first 4 rounds of 2020 capital, how many times did Stony Brook apply and how many times did we win?
Some of the times we were precluded from applying, and we applied once and won.
So this will be the second time we're applying?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it's it's something we'll want to brief you on, I think, at some point, because I think it's an exciting project. It's one that involves Suffolk County Community College and Nassau County Community College as very strong partners. Old Westbury as well is engaged, so it's really about the success of our transfer students and what they're doing, and I think it's a way to really help with that and really improve education in the region.
So it's going to be a collaborative application?
Absolutely.
Will Farmingdale be included in that? I know they're still trying for their first one.
I think they've been involved in another group, but we're happy to expand it, but it's about numbers of transfers essentially over the Stony.
Got it. Great idea.
There's an additional $3 million for a wastewater treatment study, and it has some interesting language associated with it. It says that there's $3 million available to Suffolk County, but only if they can provide a 50% match. If they can't provide the match, the entire $3 million goes to Stony Brook. And that is in furtherance of nitrogen reducing septic systems and cesspool systems. Turning to the hospital, as in the past, in the last budget, the governor provided $69 million in direct state support for the 3 SUNY hospitals. He came in again and with a proposal at that level. It does not include the $8.5 million that was added by the legislature during the legislative negotiation process last year. So we'll be going back to the legislature, asking them to add again at least $18.5 million for the SUNY hospitals. There's some capital money available for hospitals, but this is the only one that may apply to Stony Brook. $500 million for hospitals providing care in underserved regions. This is a definition that's left up to the Commissioner of Health. So we're anxiously awaiting that definition to see if it will apply to Stony Brook, or if we can get language in the budget that will make sure it applies to Stony Brook so that we can have some access to some capital. There are other buckets of capital money available for hospitals. It doesn't seem to apply to Stony Brook. We'll again be looking at those to see if we can expand it to include Stony Brook.
Elaine, another, logistical type of question. So, last year, governor does not include money in the budget for the operations. Legislature puts in $8 million. So, now, again, this year, nothing proposed in the executive, and now you're saying the legislature is gonna have to put up 18.5. So, the 8.5 from last year,
It was 18.
It was 18
last
and
year.
a half.
it was 18.5, okay.
Yep.
So, it wasn't spent, so is it basically not in, then it's in, and then it's not in again, and so we basically just have to fight to put it back in, or is this a new $18.5 million?
So what he comes in with a base amount for the support for the hospitals every year, except for 1 year when I've been here. 1 year he zeroed it out and we had to get the entire allocation from the legislature. But in the past 2 years, he's funded it at around $60 to $69 million in his proposal. So that means out of the gate, the 3 hospitals are assured $69 million in operating support. But we like to keep it at the same level year after year, so we go to the legislature and ask them to make up the difference. And last year it was $18.5 million that they added. So we will be asking them to add it back so that we're at least stay flat from last year. We will obviously make the argument they should add even more.
It used to be more than $100 million.
It used to be more than $100 million at one point.
120?
So it used to represent 9% of our operating budget. It's now just about 2% of our operating budget at this level because we've grown and the dollars have shrunk. It's probably worth reminding everybody why that money is there, and it's there to make up for the difference in the benefit rate that we pay versus what our neighbors in the community pay for the benefit rate for their employees. We spend about $75 to $80 million a year more in benefits for our staff, our hospital staff, than the community hospitals, even North Shore LIJ pay for their staff. And this is partial offset of that $75 to $80 million excess that we pay over others.
Got it. Thanks, Ken.
Other initiatives that are included in the governor's budget proposal, which are of interest to the university, he's created a Get On Your Feet loan forgiveness program for students who attend college in New York State, live in New York State after graduation, earn less than $50,000 a year. The proposal is 100% loan forgiveness for 2 years. He's also proposing full scholarships for SUNY and CUNY graduate teacher education programs for New York State residents who agree to teach in, that should say New York City, for 5 years. He creates a New York State teacher residency program, trying to model it off of a medical residency program. He funds that at about $6 million. He wants to expand the master teacher program, and Stony Brook trains the master teachers, and he wants to add about $5 million to that program. He wants to continue a scholarship program that he proposed last year and is in effect, that would give full scholarships to SUNY schools for high school students going to a SUNY who will graduate in the top 10% of their class and want to study in the STEM fields. He's adding about $50 million more to the New York Venture Capital Fund to see if he can spur venture capital investments in New York. There's a proposal to consolidate, or at least study the possibility of consolidating the management of SUNY and CUNY. He's made passage of the DREAM Act a top priority. He wants to standardize the financial aid letters across all colleges in New York State so that you can compare apples to apples with your New York State colleges. He wants the private universities to adopt this SUNY financial aid letter. He wants to expand the SUNY policy on sexual assault to all private colleges within the state of New York. So our advocacy efforts on the capital side will focus on adding at least $300 million to $400 million in critical maintenance system-wide. We will be joining our other SUNY campuses in this effort. It will be all of us out together at visiting our senators and assembly members. As I said, we want to advocate for $50 million just for Stony Brook for the High Performance Computing Center. We're going to join forces with Cold Spring Harbor Lab and Brookhaven National Lab in that ask, but that's a Long Island-based ask, not a SUNY-wide ask. Other priorities include getting some money for the design of the School of Pharmacy. We want to try and redirect some reappropriations that we haven't been able to use in the past to fund the stadium expansion and an indoor athletics training facility. This is near and dear to Senator LaValle's heart, and we'll work with him on that. As I mentioned, we want to see if we can find some opportunities for capital money for the hospital. As part of the infrastructure, the $5 billion that people are hoping to spend on infrastructure, the legislature and the governor, we would like some of that to go to the town of Brookhaven. And we're working with the town to see if we can get money for sidewalks and other traffic control improvements around the campus. On the operating side, as the President indicated, our top priority is extension of New York SUNY 2020. We are going to ask the legislature if they'll add some money back for the salary increases as they did last year. We will be asking for what the legislature put in last year, if not more, for the direct state support of the hospitals, for the legislative add-on that was afforded last time for our EOP AIM. Since there is this performance incentive fund of $18 million, we're going to see if the legislature would add money to that pot so that Stony Brook's share would be more than the 3 to 5 million indicated. The Master Researcher Program is a good idea that the governor came up with to incentivize some of our research faculty to get federal funding and private funding, but he included no money for that, so we're going to see if the legislature would put in some money for that as well. Obviously, we're going to ask the legislature, as we always do, for the $333,000 for the Marine Science Animal Lab. And there are a couple of other projects that are on our list, but you know our top 3 priorities are critical maintenance, the High Performance Computing Center, and the extension of SUNY 2020. So I just want to remind everybody where we are in the process, and we're very early in the process. The Budget Committee hearing, as I indicated, for higher ed is tomorrow. From there, we will be advocating every week in Albany for the items I just outlined. And I'm happy to take any questions.
How does the climate in Albany, how is it different this year with the ethics issues that have happened and the change in speaker, which could be positive for us, but nonetheless, how does that all play with the priorities that you've outlined?
So the first impact it's going to have is the governor has indicated he's going to tie ethics reform to the passage of a state budget, which could mean for the first time in several years we're going to have a latent budget. I can't imagine that there'll be an agreement on ethics reform by April 1st. And you know, legislators have not taken kindly to the governor tying the two together, but he has been emphatic about it. So we'll see how that impacts the timing of the budget. How it impacts what's in the budget is a whole nother can of worms, if you will. The mood in Albany is not good. People are, I don't know how to put it, distracted, I guess is the best phrase. We will be up there advocating, and we've historically done very, very well, and I hope I can report good news in April or May.
You got your work cut out for you.
Thank you.
Elaine, the program you spoke about that has the collaboration among community colleges, that's a capital program?
Yeah, the SUNY 2020 round 4 and 5, it's a capital program, yes.
So that would be equipment so we would be looking at new high-tech equipment essentially to share among Stony Brook University, the community colleges, to allow, for example, classes that are going on at Stony Brook to be performed at the same time at those places, or to use the equipment to develop online courses essentially that could be utilized as well. So
Okay.
that's where the capital component comes into
Yeah.
this. Could be renovating classrooms to make them compatible with this, so that's where it becomes
You understood
capital.
where I was
I
coming
do,
from?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
I got it.
Okay, because it said
Yeah.
classroom. I was like,
Yeah, got it. So I'll just make a general comment, which is, there's a lot of work to be done on this budget for us. I think certainly on the capital side is probably where I'm the most disappointed, because I think these are really critical things for the university. On the other hand, I would again say that to be honest, the state of New York, compared to some states, does a pretty good job of supporting public higher education. I think we need to do better. Frankly, I think we really do need to be better. But I look at what's happening in Wisconsin, where the governor has proposed to cut the University of Wisconsin system, which, by the way, is an outstanding state system, $300 million, or 13% going forward. In addition, in his proposal, changed the actual wording of the mission of the University of Wisconsin, and took out things like to educate public citizens and replace it with to find jobs, basically. So
Seek the truth you took out.
Seek the truth, yes. The truth was out, and finding jobs. So I appreciate the fact that, and it's been since I came here, that people really care about higher education in New York. We don't always see eye to eye on what's necessary to push it forward, but I do appreciate the fact that it's in the discussion. And again, I look forward to your help as we try and advocate for SUNY 2020, which is not just a Stony Brook issue, obviously. It's really an issue for the system as a whole. And there are some components here that are pretty strictly for Long Island and Stony Brook. And I would say there's some regional components to our ask, but there's also asks that go statewide as well. I think all of those things are important. And we'll push forward. But again, I want to thank just everybody here, because we do continue to have some support. There's nothing here about a drastic budget cut for the university. If we put those troublesome pay raises aside, the critical maintenance has been honored, and I think that's important as we go forward to recognize too. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's all good, and but you're right, we got our work cut out for us.
Yep.
And just, Elaine alluded to it, but, we got two things. One is primarily the budget's supposed to be adopted by the end of March. So really, the heavy lifting is going to be over the next month. And then there'll be miscellaneous legislation that we may have to fight for, like the SUNY 2020, after March until June. So it's going to be a busy couple of months. And so we may be called upon us, all of us, to use our various contacts in coordination with Elaine and Sam as to chiming in at the appropriate time with our own personal relationships with folks up there. Want to let the record reflect that our council member, Michael Smith, joined us before Elaine started the presentation. Michael, also earlier we got a update on things that are happening at Southampton and with the hospital stuff. I know near and dear to you, but perhaps offline you could talk to staff and get an update as to what we discussed. One other thing that Elaine didn't mention, which I think would be good for Stony Brook, especially as David takes over as our research officer, and the governor's proposal to make Southampton campus a leader in groundwater innovation. That's our own Steve Engelbright became the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee. So that's good for Stony Brook as well, or could be good for us. So a lot of good, useful information for us, folks, so thanks for sharing with us. Does anybody else have anything, does anybody have anything else they want to raise or bring up at this time? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn by Chris, seconded by Linda. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, and now our next meeting is May 11th, and maybe Susan,
I'm here.
oh, there you go. Maybe we could schedule for the other side of the street in May, and maybe we could see the progress being made, Ken, on the Mart and the Children's Hospital and things like that. Is that good? Would May be a good time?
Perfect.
Good?
Yes, absolutely.
So we'll shoot for that. All right, so stay safe, stay warm, go see Wolves, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice job. Did you put a pole in the field?
Yeah.
On the hospital?